dive is really getting into something pretty fundamental, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about how culture and the actual languages we speak fundamentally shape our emotions, not just talk about them, but the experience itself.
And we're digging into experiences from people who live this daily bi and multilingual individuals.
Yeah, their insights are invaluable. Like, take this account from Veronica Ye. She's a Chinese scholar, was studying in Australia.
Okay.
She talks about growing up with Chinese farewells being, subtle, implicit, not a lot of words.
Right, like holding back tears, maybe, big smiles.
Exactly, big smiles, maybe a comforting gesture, but absolutely no I love yous or hugs, even at like an emotional airport goodbye.
But the feeling, the love was still there. She felt it.
Totally. She felt it deeply. But then she gets to Australia and suddenly the expectation is to verbalize everything, the honeyed words, as she put it.
That must have been jarring.
She said it made her feel stripped and vulnerable. Just this immediate clash of emotional worlds.
And that clash, that's really our mission today, isn't it? Looking at these patterns, how language and culture create these almost different emotional selves.
Precisely. Different selves you have to navigate.
So where does this difference start? The sources seem to point to this idea of the self.
Yeah, fundamentally. You've got the Western concept, the independent self. It's all about being autonomous, prioritizing your own goals.
Which leads to expressing emotions pretty freely, good or bad.
Right. Free and frequent expression. But contrast that with the Asian or more collectivist view, the interdependent self.
Okay, interdependent. So focused on the group.
Exactly. Duty to the in-group, keeping harmony. That's paramount. So emotional restraint isn't like suppression. It's seen as
maturity.
Yeah, a sign of maturity, keeping things smooth.
Okay, but wait. If one focuses inward for goals and the other outward for harmony, how does that affect overall happiness, life satisfaction?
It's a really interesting split. In individualist cultures, people tend to be happier when they're living up to their internal standards, their own wants.
Makes sense.
But in collectivist cultures, happiness is often more strongly linked to meeting external standards, what the family or teachers or the group expects.
Wow. And you can see this in actual behavior, right? Like in conflicts.
Oh, definitely. There was this study, faced with an offense, something like 70% of the American participants reported getting aggressive, confronting it.
Okay. And the Japanese participants?
The majority reported doing nothing. Just letting it go, basically, which fits perfectly with trying to keep the relationship harmonious. Avoid the confrontation.
So it's not just how we act on emotion, but even how we read it in the first place.
Culture seems to tune our perception. They found Japanese participants focus more on, the tone of voice when figuring out someone's emotion.
Vocal cues.
Yeah. Whereas Dutch participants, they relied much more heavily on facial expressions, what they could see.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. The actual language. L1 versus L2. Your native tongue versus a learned one.
Right. This is fascinating because the consistent finding across many studies with multilinguals is that the native language, the L1, it just feels emotionally stronger.
Stronger how?
Physically stronger. They measure things like skin conductance response, SCRs. It's basically a measure of physiological arousal, like stress or excitement.
Gotcha.
And L1 swear words, or even just remembering childhood reprimands in your L1, they consistently cause a significantly bigger spike in those SCRs compared to the L2 equivalent.
So the gut punch is harder in your first language.
Exactly. It resonates more deeply.
But then, okay, here's the paradox you mentioned. Some Chinese English bilinguals felt the Chinese L1 was stronger emotionally.
Yes.
But they actually preferred expressing strong feelings in English, their L2. Why use the weaker tool?
It seems counterintuitive, right? But it's about the cultural context embedded in the language. They said the English-speaking environment had more relaxed social constraints.
So the L2 acts like a buffer.
Sort of. It allows the expression, but maybe shields them a bit from those deeply ingrained L1 cultural rules about restraint. It's a way to let it out without the full weight of the L1 norms.
That's wild. And it goes even deeper, doesn't it? The very concepts of emotion can shift.
Yeah, the mental categories themselves. Take Russian-English bilinguals. In Russian, the words for envy and jealousy point to pretty distinct concepts.
Okay.
And when tested in Russian, the bilinguals treat them as separate. But test the same people in English, where envy and jealousy are often used more interchangeably.
They groove them together. like English speakers.
Exactly. The conceptual map literally changes depending on which language they're operating in at that moment.
Which leads right into this idea of feeling like a different person.
The different person effect, yeah. It's common. Almost 2/3 of multilinguals in one survey reported feeling like different people when they switch languages.
Do they feel more like real in one versus the other?
Often, yes. More real or natural in their L1, and sometimes a bit fake or artificial in a language learned later.
Wow. Is there a specific example of this?
There's a great one from Coven's study, a woman bilingual in French and Portuguese.
Okay.
In French, she described herself and was perceived as angrier, more forceful, more aggressive, really quite assertive.
And in Portuguese?
She consciously contained herself. She was aware, she said, that she just wasn't free to perform an aggressive persona in that Portuguese context. The language and culture wouldn't easily allow for that version of her.
So, okay, pulling this all together,
Right.
What's the big takeaway here?
I think it's that culture isn't just about how we show emotion, the display rules. It shapes the very concepts, the mental architecture we use to understand our own inner world.
And for multilinguals, it's this constant navigation between different sets of emotional rules and feelings.
Absolutely. A constant, often unconscious negotiation between different emotional realities tied to each language.
Amazing. So here's a final thought for you, our listener, to mull over.
Yeah, something to think about. Research shows this thing called emotional acculturation. Immigrants' emotional patterns tend to slowly shift over time to resemble those of the host culture more.
Right. Exposure and socializing seem to drive that.
They do. But if we know that, what about the individual factors? What psychological things, or maybe even just sheer willpower or motivation, might explain why some people adapt their emotional landscape much faster or much further than others in the same situation?
Why do some people acculturate emotionally more than others?
Exactly. What makes the difference on that personal level? Something to chew on.